Welcome to Gay Men Going Deeper, a podcast series by the Gay Men's Brotherhood, where we talk about personal development, mental health, and sexuality. I am your host, Matt Landsiedel. I'm an intuitive life and spiritual coach and counselor. I specialize in teaching people how to heal toxic shame and attachment trauma and embody their authentic self so they can enjoy more meaningful and authentic connections in their lives. My areas of expertise are working with highly sensitive people, empaths, and gay men to develop a stronger sense of self-worth. So today we are talking about creating authentic connection, and we are joined by Jamaal Wesley. Welcome.
Hello.
Good to have you here. Good to have
Great
you
to
here.
be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to unpacking this topic with you. This is a topic that's very dear to my heart, and it's what I inspire people to do. And it sounds like you're doing very, very similar work to me. So I feel like we're going to be able to create something really beautiful here today.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I want to just formally introduce you to the audience with your bio here. So Jamaal is an entrepreneur that is developing a jewelry line called Aheri. Did I get that right?
Correct.
Aheri, okay. From a queer perspective, catering to the themes of inclusivity, self-expression, acceptance, and pride. He decided to further his creative passions after a cancer scare in September 2020. Before that, Jamaal spent 15 years working in the insurance industry, prioritizing stability and comfort. Little did he know how loudly his heart would speak after his life-changing experience in 2020. Since the theme of jewelry line is rooted in self-expression and staying true to one's self, Jamaal decided to share his own story of self-discovery with the world. Authentically Authentic is a story of transforming imposter syndrome, traditions, and societal pressures which empowered him in embracing his sexuality, forgiving others, and living unapologetically. In addition to the jewelry company, Jamaal looks forward to relaunching his life coaching company, Living Enlivened, in the coming months. So, yeah, very aligned. We do have a bit of a structure that we're going to follow today, but we're mostly going to riff. We wanted to answer or try our best to answer these 4 questions. What does authentic connection mean to you? In what ways do you hold yourself back from belonging and connecting? What does it feel like for you when you have authentic connection? And what can people do to have more authentic connection in their lives? So your story is very intriguing, and I want to know more about it. So this whole notion of authentically authentic and your book about helping people move through imposter syndrome, do you want to share a little bit about this with us?
Sure. So, as Matt said, I had a cancer scare, and my life altered during the whole COVID world and COVID dynamic. And so I started this jewelry company, and what I decided to do with Aheri is that I wanted to make it for the LGBTQIA plus community, and have it be a company where, as we're getting married and we're doing these things, one of the things that's important to me is that we begin to spend our money with people who actually love our love. Right.
Yeah,
and so when I began to create this jewelry company, I was like, the greatest expression of love is marriage. It's when 2 people would come and say, we want to join our lives together. So that's the spirit inside of which Aheri was born. And then my marketing strategist was like, Jamaal, you need to write a book. And I was like, write a book for what, girl? I'm like, I could write a pamphlet if I chose to write a book, but I really didn't have it that I could. But when I sat down to write, and I was thinking about what is pride, right? And pride is owning who we authentically are, not being ashamed of who we are, no matter how we identify inside the LGBTQIA plus community. And identifying is somewhat of a choice, right? And some of it is born, and whatever that is, we still get to choose and honor each other for who we choose to be identified as, right? And so this book, Authentically Authentic, began to just come out of me, and I began to look at my own journey in personal growth and development and over the years, and how I grew into myself. So Authentically Authentic, the tagline of the book is called, "It's a journey, not a destination." One of the things that when people often refer to being authentic, one of the things that I find is that they think that authenticity is throwing up how I feel in this moment about something. Like I'm being authentic with you. And that's truly not or it could be one definition of authenticity, but the world of authenticity that I explore in this book is setting aside all of your traumas. Who do you choose to be in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And when you choose to be in this moment, that's authentically who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And we begin to discover ourselves through my personal journey, my personal stories, like my own coming out stories. And the letter that I wrote to my mom is in this book when I just said, I've had enough. I'm going to be authentically me, even at the effect of losing you. Like, I will no longer try to hide who I am to suit you. I have to be me. And how we gain power inside of that. And then, how when we live our authentic selves, or as our authentic selves, how we make space for other people. So that's the exploration of this book is, and I'm very vulnerable inside of this whole story. And I share, like all kinds of stories from my own life. So that's the book and how it came to be.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You said one thing that really stood out. You said choosing who we're going to be in this moment, and I view authenticity as the like almost like the bedrock of authenticity is presence, right? In this moment, how am I showing up in this moment? And I think presence really is the foundation of authentic connection. Like when we enter authentic connection, we have to be in the present moment. We have to be with each other. And it's for me, authentic connection is less about telling stories of who we are, right? It's about who am I in this moment? What is that presence? What is the energy of who I am in this moment? For me, that's the most authentic expression that I can share with somebody. I think it can still be authentic sharing stories because my stories are authentic. They're versions of me, maybe from the past or who I want to become in the future. But the most authentic aspect of who I am and how I enter a connection as an authentic person is let's talk about this moment. Let's talk about how I feel in this moment when I'm with you. So yeah, I want to practice that today with you. I want to really truly practice like being in the present moment with each other and allowing the audience to really feel what that feels like. So
yeah, Matt, I think it's really great because one of the things you just said in this moment and being present, and our past, most of the time, it dictates who we are in this moment versus informs who we are in this moment. And that's a distinct conversation.
Yeah.
And so my past can inform because I'm not ignorant to it, right? But it doesn't have to dictate who I am in this moment. I still have choice in this moment. And that's one of the things that I heard you say. And that was, when we began to discuss this whole conversation, I'm like, let's just dance, because the world of authenticity is of original origin.
Yeah.
Right. And so that means in this moment, what is meant to arise right now, right here. Yeah. And so, we could go through a script and we can do all of this stuff and practice and whatever, but that's no fun.
Yeah.
Fun is when my heart connects to yours and yours connects to mine and we just explore inside of what's possible.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think this is good. There's also something you said, I can't remember what but it incited something in my mind around the definition, like the difference between fitting in and belonging, and this whole notion of like, when we are authentic. Oh, that's what it was around how you, with your mom, you don't want to sacrifice your authenticity for connection. And that's what fitting in is. Fitting in is I'm willing to sacrifice who I authentically am to move into connection. Whereas I see belonging is authenticity and connection get to coexist. So I get to be authentically who I am, and I get to come into connection with you. And that's the difference. And I think it's the difference for me is conformity. We're not willing to conform for connection. We're willing to say, you know what, here I am standing in as a sovereign being, and I still get to move into connection with you. That's the beauty of authentic connection.
Yeah. So, this book, my book, ends with a quote by E. Cumming, and I'm going to read it to you. And it's a short quote. Yeah. It says, "To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you everybody else means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight and never stop fighting." Yeah. When we begin to look at social media, right? Like when I scroll through social media, I'm like, oh my gosh, people take the pictures the same way. Somebody pouted their lips this way and they think that that's the way to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
This world is fighting every day to make us everybody else.
Yeah,
But to
exactly.
be nobody but yourself is the hardest fight that we'll ever fight.
Yeah.
To be okay with not going with the grain of life and to say, no, I'm going to be authentically me, like I did with my mom in this story,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm going against the grain.
Yeah.
I think I choose to be me. I can allow you to be you, but I have to honor me.
Yeah. Well, and is that not where imposter syndrome comes from? It comes from, okay, I want to get from destination A to B, and I'm looking at all the other people around me that have gone from A to B, and I'm trying my best to be like them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to take the path that they took so I can sing like they sing, or so I can speak like they speak, or whatever it might be. Well, what if we just took our own path from A to B and were just authentic in that? Would that impact how much imposter syndrome we have? Like how much of imposter syndrome comes from comparing our journey to another person who's already completed that journey? Completed in air quotes, because are we ever really complete on our journey, right?
No.
Yeah.
You know, yes, I like all of that, right? And the book, it navigates several different worlds of, imposter syndrome, right?
Mhm.
Like the superhero, the perfectionist. I suffer from that one.
Yeah,
And
ditto.
how, like trying to be perfect leads to paralysis,
Yeah.
right? And like I tell, even in the book, I say, even as I'm writing this book, I've read through this book 50 times before I'm willing to release it, because
Yeah.
that's my perfectionist part at play, right?
Yeah.
Like it has to be perfect. And then a friend of mine was like, Jamaal, just release it. Your heart will be heard in the words of your book.
For real. Yeah.
Stop trying to make it perfect.
Mhm.
And so it's, and I talk about how community, like I'm going to use the word good because I can't find a different word right now,
Mhm.
but how a solid and good community of people who are not just yes people are
Mhm.
imperative to your life,
Yeah.
because they will impart knowledge like that and say, Jamaal, just release it. Matt,
Yeah.
no, you're good enough as you are.
Yeah.
It's good enough, your heart will be heard, rather than, oh no, I can't release it because it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah. That's the remedy to it, to what we're talking about, in my opinion. Like imposter syndrome, I'm going through it with singing right now, and I'm standing up on stage performing, being like, who am I to be a singer? Like this is so weird, and all these people that are really good at it and have been doing it for years are watching me. And what I've noticed is letting people in to support me and encourage me. That is actually what is the remedy to it, because when I feel like I'm in my perfectionist mentality, I'm all on my own, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm paralyzed by that. So I'm curious for you, where did your perfectionism come from? Where do you think it comes from?
You know, I one of the places, right? I starts early. It
Mm.
starts early. Like you would be surprised when you begin to discover and look over your life what you find. So when I was in pre-K, we had to learn this song, "Greatest Love of All" by Whitney Houston for graduation. And so my mom, with a belt in hand, if I messed up the words to the song, I
Oh
would
wow.
get a little lash, right? And so from that moment, it was like, I have to be perfect. I have to get it right. If it's not right, then I could get in trouble. It's not safe not to be right or
Yeah.
not to be perfect.
Yeah.
So from 4 years old, that's the space I've lived from.
Hmm. Yeah, that's challenging for sure.
Yeah, it can be. And I say that because even in my perfectionistic ways or whatever, one of the things that I really got is that when you know that that's something you suffer from or deal with, then you have the power to do something about it.
Mm.
The access to altering life is to, even in AA and all those places, they say the first step is admitting you have a problem, right?
Mhm.
because the moment you can admit that you suffer from something is the moment you can actually interrupt it and alter it.
Yeah.
And like my perfectionist, it's not a problem. It has its place in life, and it can, it can make things great.
Yeah.
And it's something again to be informed by it and not run by it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think perfectionism for me has it's been a major contributor to why I'm successful and being a high achiever. So I am thankful for that.
Yeah.
But it has eroded authentic connection for me in so many ways. And I think that is, I view it as like the paradox of perfectionism, is that when we put out perfectionism to the world sees us as that, and then people feel insecure being vulnerable and imperfect around us, so they present their most perfect self, and it's reinforcing this negative feedback loop. So we think the world is perfect, and then we're right, so it's mirroring back to us as we are. Vulnerability has completely transformed my life, because now when I'm practicing vulnerability and telling people how messy my life can be and how imperfect I actually am, people are showing me their imperfections and being vulnerable with me. And then it gives me grace, it gives me space to bring forward my authentic self into connection. So I do think, for me, like healing my perfectionism has been like happened simultaneously alongside me moving towards authentic connection, right? They kind of go hand in hand. So it's been pretty beautiful, just going through the transformation that I've been going through around this. So
yeah, I totally agree. And here's where this has affected me, right? When I used to go on dates and I would present this buttoned up perfect self, and like, this is why you should love me, and I've started a jewelry company and I'm writing a book and I'm da 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 da,
yeah.
right? Like, those connections would never last. When I sit back, let my hair down, and be like, you know what? I'm broke as a joke. I've thrown all my money into this gum jewelry company, and I don't know how we're gonna pay for dinner. Right? Like, those connections have lasted because it's like, oh, you are real. You are a real human being. So I totally get that, like, us being vulnerable and us just being who we authentically are allows for that authentic connection versus this facade trying to interact with your facade of being put together, when behind this curtain, right, my life's a mess.
Yeah. I find that vulnerability allows us to see the humanness in each other. And a lot of us, that's what we're craving. And, you look at like things that are really popular, I see it, well, at least in the space that I work in, is when people are vulnerable and they have big shares around things that they're struggling in life, and people want that, they want more of that. And I think this whole manicured way of approaching and sharing ourselves, it's not helpful, and I think it's quite toxic, actually. Like if you look at Instagram and you look at all the way people are putting their best foot forward, and then you have people comparing their behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reels, and it's like, no wonder we all feel inadequate. And so I'm a firm believer that it's important to share what we're going through, our insecurities, our fears, all of it. It's all important to bring onto the table.
Yeah, for me, I look forward to the day when I can totally detox from social media.
Me too.
Because for me, I notice my own thinking when I see it. It's like, oh my God, he has a nice body. That's not my body.
Yeah.
Oh, would I be loved more if I look like that, or whatever? Like, nothing wrong with the thought. I'm grateful that I have the presence to be present to the thought and not allow it to continue to run.
Yeah.
And saying all of that to say, I can see how toxic it is, because a lot of times people are presenting a perfect picture, but they're very unhappy behind the scenes anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
I want to be in my life, present in my life, living my life, and taking that whole world out as much as possible.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's so important. I want to introduce the audience to authentic relating. There's 5 principles in authentic relating that I think are really important. This is a good segue into them. So, authentic relating is a practice that I'm trained in. I teach it. I've taken the art of being human training. I'm going to be taking the leadership training probably in February. So, it's a really amazing school of information to acquire in learning how to relate authentically. So it is the teachings of how to move into authentic connection. And there's 5 principles to the practice. I'll just share a little bit about what the practice is before I talk about the principles. The authentic relating is essentially it's being real and genuine in connection. That's what it is. It's built on the foundation of presence. So it's not about storytelling. We don't enter authentic relating and talk about, oh, what did I do yesterday, or who I was as a child, or what am I going to do next year, or who do I want to be in 10 years from now. It's a pure presence and a purely embodied practice. So you sit across from each other and you do exactly what we're doing now, where we're talking about and we're owning our experience in this moment. So things like, what is alive for me in this moment? How am I experiencing you sitting across from you right now? How are you experiencing me sitting across from me right now? And it pulls us away from the past, away from the future, and into the present moment, which is why I was very drawn to it, because it's a really beautiful way to learn how to be present. It's almost like meditative in connection. It's like meditating in connection. It's really beautiful. But there's 5 principles, and the first one is welcome everything. So in authentic relating, you welcome everything onto the table. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be sensations, it can be thoughts, it can be judgments, it can be assumptions, anything like that. It is welcome in the connection. And I think for me, that is the foundation of any authentic connection. It is that everything has to be welcome and be able to be brought on the table. Otherwise, it's not authentic, right? So holding space for everything and anything. The next one is assume nothing. So we really want to, when we're authentically relating, is we want to check our assumptions in reality. So I don't know you very well, right? And I have a story inside my head that I've created about who you are, and right, exactly. And I'm sure the same for you with me. And the beautiful thing about authentic relating is we're always bringing that to the table. So there's a game you can play in this one principle, which is like the story I'm telling myself about you is, and you just shoot back and forth. Like, this is the story I have made up in my head. And it's quite a humorous thing, because I'm 9 times out of 10 I'm always wrong. Like, we judge people based off of how they look, and we're like, oh, I've got a story for who I think they are in this world, and we make them play characters in our mind. So assume nothing is about breaking down that barrier. And it is a very big barrier to authentically connecting with people, because when we bring stories and preconceived notions of who someone is, it almost impairs our ability to be able to connect with them authentically, because we're projecting the story of who we think they are onto them, and it can be one of the barriers to connecting. Principle number 3 is reveal your experience. So this one is about letting the world know, or letting the person you're relating with know what is going on for you in an unfiltered way. So for example, I just did my second open mic performance, and I was completely nervous, and I got up there and I owned my nervousness, and I shared with the audience that I was nervous, and I revealed my inner experience, and it really helped dissipate some of the that nervous energy. So that's kind of an example. And then principle number 4 is related. So it's about owning your experience. So when we reveal our experience, it's important to um, secondarily own it. Like, what is going on for me in this experience? Because oftentimes when we reveal something, we have a tendency, when especially in conflict, to say you, or to blame the person, like, and project onto them and say, you're creating this experience for me. So owning our experience allows us to take responsibility for ourselves, instead of projecting our reality onto someone else's screen and being like, this is right. So it's really about taking responsibility for ourselves. And then the last one is honor self and other. And I really love this one, because honoring self and other is about well, obviously the first one is making staying in connection a priority. So when I honor myself and I honor you, I'm saying my goal is to maintain this connection, is to stay in this connection regardless. So I'm honoring both of us. I'm creating a space where we can see the humanity in each other when we're honoring both of us. And we make a priority that both of our needs are going to be met, right? So we're both bringing different things into this connection, and we have needs and expectations. And when we honor both of us, we maintain that connection, and we say we want to be able to leave this connection with trying our best that both of our needs get met in this connection. So it's a really beautiful practice. I love it. And it's something I've been practicing now for, I think this is my third year, going on 3 years. And I teach it in my workshops and stuff. So it's been very transformative for toxic shame, actually, is what I use it for in my workshops, and helping people really reveal who they are when maybe they've been spending a majority of their life hiding because toxic shame has told them that there's something wrong with them and that it's not safe to bring forward their authentic self. Yeah.
Really beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, several things, like I was jotting down. So if you saw me,
I saw that.
Jotting down things, right?
Yeah.
Or jotting down those 5 principles. And I just, my brain goes back to what this book talks about.
Yeah.
The world of the introduction of this book is dedicated to my friend and her queer child. And so growing up, we knew that this child was probably going to be somewhere along in one of those letters, LGBTQIA+, right? And so when he became of age, I was like, hey, you need to go ahead and have a conversation with him around his sexuality. Because for some reason, parents, they are like, well, my child is going to come to me, right? And I'm like, no, go to him and allow him to know that he is loved just as he is. And when she did, he was like, oh my gosh, like, Mom, I'm bisexual. I like both. And she was like, okay, I love you. And I had her write him a love letter. And she actually, as a trailer to the book, she reads this love letter to him for the first time on camera, right? And the emotions that come about is amazing. But we make up these stories in our head about what it's gonna be like when we come out, right? And I was like, you have to free him from that. And so I don't know why I started that story, but it just, inside of the world of honoring each other.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And so I love that. And when you said welcome all things, or how did you language that?
Welcome everything. Yeah.
Welcome everything.
Yeah.
When we welcome everything, right, instead of resist it, when we welcome it, it gives us a place to question.
Yes.
Why did I have this body sensation? Why did I react to that this way? What is it about me that's resisting this? What is it about me that has me accept this? Not from a space that something's wrong, but from a space of getting to know who you are, or how you've been built. Like, why am I a perfectionist? Me questioning that had me go back to that moment when I was 4 years old, and how that one moment shaped the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And when you are able to question everything, you begin to have access to a new way of living life.
Yeah.
Right? One of the things you also said, owning your experience, right? Yeah. One of the chapters in this book talks about the world of forgiveness, and how when we forgive, it actually returns us to our authentic self. And there's this beautiful story about my friend named Marianne, who was in a car accident. And I won't tell you all of the story. You have to get the book to read it. But she was in a car accident. And one of the things that just had me like shook in my conversation with Marianne, she was like, she forgave the guy. And I'm like, how do you forgive some guy that left you temporarily paralyzed, ran you off the road? How do you forgive him? And what she said is, I needed all of me to heal. And I just started to cry, because what I got in that moment was that unforgiveness, or being unwilling to own our experience, is like giving a piece of our soul over to someone else, or that situation, and we're no longer whole, we're no longer complete. And until that person alters, our experience of life doesn't alter.
Yeah.
But the moment we can forgive and own our own experience, it leads to a different experience of life. So
That's so profound and so beautiful. And it reminds me of just the journey that I'm on around healing trauma in my life. And you know, needing, what was it exactly that you said? I need my whole self to heal.
he
That's
said, I
that
needed all of me to
I need
heal.
all of me to heal. And I think a lot of the audience is going to relate to this. Like, how often do we hold hostage, whether it's our parents or our exes, right? And we are feel so traumatized, or we have all this hurt inside of us, and we can't actually move on. And I'm going through this right now. I'm like in this kind of final, like final lap of healing trauma that I've been on for like 15 years, and I feel like it's finally coming to a close. And the reason why I know I'm at the final lap is because I'm taking responsibility, and I'm no longer holding my parents hostage. I am able to see their humanity. I'm able to practice empathy for them, and I am able to let go of the past hurts. Right. And I think that's one of the final pieces, because then that means that I now have my whole self back. I'm no longer fragmented and have parts of me hating or hurting in different places. I can bring it all back, integrate all the pieces of me that were fragmented, and I can come back into wholeness. And I do think that is the journey of healing trauma, specifically, is coming back into wholeness. Yeah, what
Yeah.
a beautiful quote. I love that.
It, and that was part of me telling my own stories. Like, in the world of forgiveness, my dad was on drugs, and my dad sold things out of our home and all that good old stuff. And my parents ended up getting divorced and what have you.
Mhm.
And I tell the story about how I thought I was good with my dad, right? Like, I've forgiven him,
Yeah.
right? But there was this self-righteous attitude as it relates to his life and what he should and should not be doing as a 50-something-year-old man at the time.
Yeah.
And the story that I tell about him and how I forgave him and the freedom that it gave him access to inside of me forgiving him,
Hmm.
right? Like, in the book, there's the only letter that I've ever written my dad in jail, when he was in jail, because I had refused up until that point. But I wrote him this letter, and it was my letter telling him that, I loved all of him, and I
Hmm.
really got that he did the best that he could,
Yeah.
right? But I also, something that came to me several weeks ago was, in order to really forgive ourselves, we must first forgive our parents,
Hmm.
because we can't forgive those parts of ourselves that are at the effect of our parents until we forgive our parents for being who they are.
Yeah. So true.
So, so that is access to forgiving ourselves when we forgive them.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
most people don't really get that concept. I didn't get it until 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think I'm still learning it. And it's the thing about forgiveness is, it's kind of like confidence or acceptance. Like, it's not just, you don't just arrive to it. It's like it's a constant practice, and I'll have days where I feel forgiveness, and I'll have days where I feel hatred. And I think that, I don't know if there is ever a place where we arrive where it's complete. And maybe, I don't know, I haven't experienced that yet. So I think I still am kind of up down, up down. But I do think maybe the ego has a hard time forgiving, and the soul is forgiveness. The soul is the essence of forgiveness and love and compassion. So I think when I'm in my ego, I tend to have a hard time forgiving. But then when I'm in my softer, more tender, soul-centered self, I tend to be more able to forgive. So I guess that's the duality of the human experience. What program am I operating from? And then I'll let you know if I've forgiven or not.
Yeah, I think, but that's our humanity. And
Yeah.
see, that's the thing that um we try to discredit,
Hmm.
or try to set aside. It's
Hmm.
understanding that both can exist.
Yeah.
See, we try to kill off that unforgiving person such that the forgiving person can live.
Yeah.
And that unforgiving person says, hell no, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And it gets
Right?
louder.
Yeah, it's just like, no, 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 no. But the thing is honoring that this unforgiveness, whatever. And most of the time when we've moved on, it's situational, right? Like, I've forgiven my mom and I love my mom and my mom is my biggest cheerleader, what have you. But the other day she said something and she was like, oh my God, you're just like your cousin so and so. And I noticed that I wanted to shut down because it pissed me off. And she used to do that to me when I was growing up. Then I noticed that's what was happening. And I said, who do you choose to be in this moment? Are you going to be that little boy who cowers and just shuts down? Or are you going to be an adult and say, hey, mom, this is what I need?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I called my mom and I said, hey, the other day when you said X, that didn't work for me. And I would prefer that you didn't do that.
Good
And this is what it did for me. Like I wanted to shut down and I saw myself saying, hey, you know what? If I sound like so-and-so, I don't have to talk to you. Right. Like I said all of it.
Yeah, good.
She was like, wow, I never knew that would have made you feel that way. I'm sorry. I won't do that again.
Yeah.
So that's how authenticity works. It's like when we honor, like I didn't make myself wrong for feeling that way in that moment. I honored it. And then I chose who I was going to be in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And 9 times out of 10, I think people are operating on programs and there is no intention, there's no malice. It's like they're just literally operating in their program and their program bumped up against your program, right? And it's so we often think and then we project. So when we don't speak up and we're not authentic and we don't set boundaries, we're constantly bumping against programs and we're not actually giving people the chance to understand us and to understand their own behavior and the impact their behavior has on us. So that what you're describing is authentic connection. We're moving into a connection where we're willing to be authentic. We're willing to express ourselves, right? Self-expression is a very, very big part of being authentic, in my opinion. We need to learn how to be self-expressive, and then we'll notice that our relationships will transform in such a beautiful way. So it's a good example of what you just shared there.
Yeah, but self-expression inside of respect and honor, like that last part, right? Of what you said, honor self and others.
Yeah.
Not self-expression like at the effect of something. And the way you described it was beautiful. Like there are a certain core of my friends, the people that are the closest to me. One of the agreements that we have is that we may disagree and we may not see eye to eye.
Yeah.
But we're committed to each other understanding that we love and honor each other. And let's remain in communication until whatever is meant to arise arises. Because sometimes you don't have words for what's upsetting you.
Yeah,
right?
True. Yeah.
So let's remain in communication until what needs to erupt erupts.
Yeah.
And let's deal effectively with what erupts.
Yeah.
But we're doing it from the space of I love you, I honor you, and we're committed to that. This relationship thrives.
Yeah.
And it doesn't thrive on top of BS. It thrives on top of love, commitment, and honor.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think there's an element of emotional maturity that's required to enter authentic connection. And I always say that you can only hold space for someone's authenticity as much as you're holding space for yourself, because it's hard work to let someone be authentic in your presence, because letting someone be authentic in your presence it's not going to be you. It's not going to be your authenticity. It's going to be them. Right. And there's a very, very strong amount of emotional maturity that's required to do that, because that means that core beliefs, core values might bump up against each other. You might not share similar beliefs about the world, politics, these sorts of things. And can I still choose to stay in connection with somebody where they're being their authentic self and I'm being my authentic self, and we can still allow our separate realities to merge into one relational reality, right? Where we're coexisting with each other. That's tough work. That's really tough work. And that's why most relationships, whether they're intimate or platonic, aren't successful, right? Tons of friends stop being friends. Tons of people break up. Tons of marriages separate and divorce because of, I think, this exact thing we're talking about. There's a lack of emotional maturity in people letting other people be who they are in their presence. Yeah.
Yes, totally. And so we have the book talks about relating in relationships, and are you operating from ego love? egoic love or
Mhm.
from authentic love,
Yeah,
right?
perfect. Yeah, love that.
Because most people are in relationship from the world of ego and not from the space of authentic love. Authentic love is for me to love you, Matt, just because I love you,
Mhm.
not because I want something from you. The moment I want something from you is to have a need fulfilled over here, which is from our ego.
Mm.
Most of the time when you'll hear it and you'll see it in partnerships, we'll say, Matt, I love you. And Matt may say, oh, okay, or that's awesome. And then the person will be like, well, Matt, you didn't say it back to me.
Yeah.
Well, did you say, Jamaal, did you say I love you because you wanted me to experience your love? Or did you say I love you so you could hear I love you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Two distinct places to operate from,
Yeah, true. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so when we go into a relationship from the world of ego or from needing a need fulfilled over here where we are,
Yeah.
once that need stops being fulfilled and met, that's when the breakdowns happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we try to go find someone else to fill that need.
Yeah, exactly. Or we manipulate, and
Or we
that's the
manipulate.
difference. So ego loves to manipulate to get its needs met, whereas soul doesn't. Soul is very serving of other. And so the thing for me, because we operate in both domains, the thing for me is to honor and be authentic and communicate these relational needs. So if you're saying I love you to me, to hear I love you back, I would prefer that you just say, I would love to hear you say I love you right now. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? So go straight for what you want as opposed to trying to be manipulative and going around the bush to get what you want. And that again, that's such a what principle would that be in the authentic relating principles? It would be reveal your experience. You're wanting to feel loved, right? You have a yearning, you have a desire, and you're going about meeting that in a way that is cunning and manipulative, which is exactly what the ego does to get it's very self-serving. The ego is very self-serving. So what a great thing to point out. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I talk about how this whole new craze over the last maybe 5-10 years of your love language.
Hmm.
And even in that, most people are like, okay, my love language is gifts. So and what they do is they go out and they buy their partner lots of gifts. And then they're like, but I buy you gifts, Matt.
Why don't you buy me
Why
gifts?
don't you buy me gifts? And they're like, okay. But they have not really done the work to say, well, Matt, what's your love language? Oh, it's
Yeah,
quality time.
yeah,
Oh, well, I'm going to plan a nice picnic in the park for us, Matt.
yeah,
Right. And then, oh, Matt, my love language is gifts. I love when you buy me flowers.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And like you said, it's really that whole world of communicating what
yeah.
our needs are.
Yeah, exactly. That's I think that was where it transitions from reveal your experience into own your experience. Like and but a lot of people struggle with that because I think a lot of people have injuries around having needs. Like it's shameful to have needs. It's bad to have needs. I don't want to be needy. I don't want to be desperate. I don't want to be bossy or demanding. There's so much shadow shit around having needs that people buy into, and I think it's sexy. I think it's really sexy when somebody knows what they need and they ask for it in a very clear and direct manner, right? And I think we need to make that more sexy, and I think people need to be more communicative about their needs because it's the fabric of relational dynamic and authentic connection is understanding your needs and communicating them so they can be met. It's essential. Yeah.
Like I agree 100%, Matt. And the only thing that I'll add to that is just as the world of me being perfectionist until discovered was stuck at 4 years old,
Mhm.
most of the time our communication patterns are stuck
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
time when we had whatever trauma that was.
Yeah.
So whatever that trauma was, right? Like at 5 or 6, where I have to manipulate to get what I want. I have to tell a lie to get what I want. I have to go around the mulberry bush to get what I want from
Totally.
my mom or my dad. Our world of communication is stuck right there.
Mhm.
And until we really get that and we begin to distinguish do the work, whatever work that is,
Yeah.
to distinguish where our communication patterns are stuck. That's the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, and it reminds me of like just so many, if you think about it, when we're young and we have needs and we want something and our parents deny us or they shame us, like you shouldn't have that. I don't have money to buy you that. And we get shamed for having needs and desires. I think that's where it comes from. So yeah, you're
Mhm.
right. People go around the mulberry bush trying to be deceitful and trying to find ways to get their needs met. So, yeah, that's when I think about entering an authentic connection and specifically romantic, I'm like, that's number one priority. Like if my partner doesn't know how to communicate their needs, like it ain't gonna work because
Yeah.
I'm very assertive and I'm very about like, I'll go straight over the bush and I'll be like, this is exactly what I need. Right. And so it's key. It's key to authentic connection, in my opinion. Yeah.
Totally.
Mhm.
Totally. It was very interesting, and I'm gonna tell this story. Like, even today, like over the last weekend, I met this guy, right? This morning, I'm walking into the grocery store, and he's walking out of this gym that's catty corner to the grocery store, and he's like, "Hey, how are you? I wanted your phone number this weekend, but you left, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Okay, cool. You can have my phone number, whatever, right?"
Like a
And
romantic
so,
kind of connection.
yes, I guess.
Ooh.
Well, I'll tell you. So when I get in the grocery store, I'm doing my shopping. By the time I get to my car, he was like, "Hey, it was really great to see you. I would love to hang out sometime."
Ooh.
So when someone leads in with, "I would love to hang out sometime," my question then was, "Well, what does hang out mean to you?"
Yeah.
Then he says, "Well, I would like to invite you back to my place." Okay, so what did you have in mind when I came to your place? This, you making dinner, we watching TV. What do you have in mind?
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, I'm interested in you physically." Well, thank you for saying that, but I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in more meaningful connections, and we can be friends and we can have dinner in public.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that work for you? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but it's like this whole world of being, I guess the word I want to use is covert, or like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I just want
Yeah.
to hang out." No, sir. What does hanging out mean? Right?
It
Like,
feels sneaky. It feels
right.
sneaky and yucky, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can tell me, "Hey, I just want to have sex with you." I
Yeah.
can be either a yes or a no,
Yeah.
right? Or whatever that is. But it goes to, like I said, most people's communication levels are stuck and they think that they have to do this dance. I've been in the world 41 years and I know what those little texts mean. Like, "I want you to come to my place." No, sir.
Yeah. Or do you want to get together and cuddle tonight? And it's like the second they start spooning, it's like they go grab your dick. It's like, okay, just say you want to bang. Like don't
Right.
come in, like with this. Yeah, it's very misleading. I find that I'm not down for that sort of thing. Yeah. I
I'm
like
like,
it
"You, Matt, I'm
direct.
jumping over the bush." Like, "No,
Yeah.
sir."
Yeah, exactly.
What do
Yeah.
you want from me?
Yeah. That's so good.
But I think, and I make it like a joke. But when we begin to honor ourselves and honor our own needs and our
Mhm.
own wants, we find ourselves not in situations that we don't want to be in,
Yeah.
right? Like, many years ago, I would have been like, "Oh, well, he just wants me to come over. He just wants to hang out,"
Yeah.
right? Knowing in the back of because the intuitive self is always talking, knowing
Totally. And it
good and
always
dadgum
knows.
well,
Yeah.
right? Knowing good and dadgum well, this dude has certain intentions, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you get over there like, "Oh, I'm shocked."
Yeah, exactly.
but
Yeah.
but it's something. Oh, our experience of life when we begin to honor ourselves,
Yeah.
our needs and our wants.
Yeah.
It's when I did it, like when the conversation was complete and I honored myself, it
Mhm.
was just so sweet to even celebrate that moment of honoring myself and my needs.
Yeah. That is empowerment for me. Like if someone were to say, what does empowerment mean to you? That's what it would mean to me. It would mean that I understand my needs and I feel strong enough to be able to advocate for myself and to stand in my power around getting my needs met. It's huge. It's so huge. Yeah. And nothing feels better than empowerment, in my opinion. I just love that feeling of being empowered. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what authentic connections do for me. I think about, like, what do I love about authentic connections? They allow me to step into my power. They allow me to have deep connection. They allow me to feel seen and to see, right? There's nothing more intimate than bearing witness to somebody when they're in their authenticity and being vulnerable about themselves. And I think that too, like, just expressing our needs, for me at least, expressing my needs can be a very vulnerable thing, because what can happen, at least, to my my traumatized younger self, it's like, as soon as you express a need, there's a possibility for rejection. There's a possibility for a no. There's a possibility for somebody taking advantage of that need and exploiting it. So it's very vulnerable for me to express what I want and what I need to people.
Yeah,
Do
totally.
yeah.
And, even in that, right? Like expressing my need, one of the things that I've taken on, this is not the truth. And I even start my book by, my book is not the truth,
Mhm.
right? It's the beginning of an exploration of something. So what I'm saying
Yeah.
is not the truth. But what I have taken on is going for it. And if someone is a no, then it was meant to be a no,
Yeah.
beyond my knowing.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason they are a no, and it's okay that they're a no.
Yeah.
And so like taking on life and dating and all of that stuff inside of that,
Mhm.
like I don't know why they were a no, and I'm happy that they were a no, because there's something that universe saw down the road that had them be a no, and that's continuing to protect me.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I consciously navigate rejection, actually, believe it or not. When I experience rejection, I'm like, my ego self has a desire. Somebody is in their soul self, their higher self, and they can see what I can't see right now. Because my ego, I'm blinded by desire, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I were to fall into my higher self, into my soul self, I would see that there's misalignment here, and the other person just beat me to that punch. You know what I mean? And that's how I consciously navigate rejection. And it's been very helpful for me, because it's less about making it about me and making it about just alignment in general, right? It's rejection is just someone beat you to feeling misaligned. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, we can hang out anytime.
Yeah, for real. I'm curious for you though, what would you say is the most challenging thing about authentic connection for you?
The most challenging thing about authentic connection to me is the ability to be present. And what I mean by that, like I have the ability, and I
Yeah.
probably have more ability than most,
Yeah.
but just like every other human being, I get sucked away,
Yeah.
right? And by my own feelings, desires, wants, all of that stuff.
Mhm.
And when that happens, not making myself wrong for it,
Yeah. Yeah.
just honoring it as a human being human experience. And it's simply that, and getting back into alignment with what I'm committed to.
Mm.
So I think that's one of the biggest things for me and most human beings, is we have something we're committed to, but we make ourselves so wrong when we get misaligned with what we're
Yeah.
committed to, versus just saying, oh, I'm no longer aligned with what I'm committed to, and getting back on track. We go
Mhm.
down this rabbit hole of making ourselves wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. I think, when I think about the most challenging thing for me, I would say it's probably related to hurting people. Like, I just really have always struggled with that, like whether it's rejecting people or speaking my truth, and my truth being that I'm not in alignment to somebody, or I want to, whatever it might be. So I tend to have most of my life, I've misused my empathy. I'm a pretty empathic person, and I've misused it because I would trump my needs over theirs, because I'd be like, oh well, if I honor my truth here, I'll hurt them. So I will self-sacrifice, I'll betray myself, and I'll do what I think is best for them. And then so I bled my power out most of my life by doing that. And um I've stopped doing that over the course of the last few years, and actually, believe it or not, authentic relating was what really helped me with this. and now I'm very convicted in my truth and my needs, and I've hurt a lot of people by being that way. And when I say hurt, it's not intentional, but it was me choosing to be in my truth, and it hurt somebody, right? So I do think we're always hurting people when we are being authentic, and we're choosing to honor ourselves. But I think what I'm learning now in my life is how to do it with a little bit more tact. Maybe like before, when I was, going from this place of feeling very concerned about hurting other people, I had to transition away from that with almost like a shadow energy and like a fire inside of me. And I think I was setting my boundaries and creating space around me with a little less tact. And I'm getting better at it. So I'm using a lot more kindness and tact in the way that I'm delivering my no's or my misalignments with people. And it's helping. But at the end of the day, people are still left hurt. So it's something I do struggle with, and I'm still working through.
Yeah. My book talks about, when I forgave my dad who was on drugs and all of this stuff, right? And it talks about just that, how, just because I forgave him doesn't mean that I sacrificed myself.
Yeah.
Right. Like my dad couldn't have come and lived with me being on drugs. And, and I talk about how we often sacrifice ourselves for the love of another, or we withhold our love from another to protect ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to begin to find that balance. Now, when I began to talk about those misalignments, right, and honor myself, I actually tell the person, I'm committed that you feel a certain way, right? Like I'm committed that you feel honored. Just because I'm a no doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
It just means that we're on two different paths, or it doesn't work. Like even in the conversation today, right, with the guy in the text message, like one of my responses could have been, who the hell do you think I am?
Yeah.
Like I'm not some booty call, and I'm not this and I'm not that, who like that, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I got what you're committed to. This is what I'm committed to. They're not aligned. And here's what we can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And if that doesn't work for you, that's fine. But here's what I'm willing to do. We can meet in public. We can have a dinner, lunch, whatever. That's fine with me. And, we can begin, and I call it shaping their listening. So before I speak, I'm going to tell you exactly, Matt, like I'm committed that at the end of this conversation, that you're left empowered, or you're left honored for how you feel and what you want. And this is what I need from me. And this is, like I'm willing to hear how you feel. Right.
Yeah.
So it's about shaping how they listen it. Now, it doesn't always work, and people are people and they deal with what they deal with.
Yeah.
And what I see in that is that I know my own heart. And if I'm settled with that, my heart, the intention in my heart was that they were left whole and complete.
Mm-hmm.
And if they weren't, it had nothing to do with me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that falls into the principles of honor, self, and other. It sounds like you're doing a really good job with that. Yeah. I can't believe it's been an hour. This has been the fastest podcast I think I've ever done. It just flew. Holy shit. It feels like it's been 15 minutes. It's crazy. But I want to wrap up with the last question. I think we answered the other questions in a nice way of riffing. So that's beautiful how they were answered spontaneously. But the last question is, what can people do to have more authentic connection in their lives? Like if you were to leave the listener viewer with a couple tips that you've used to help you really get good at moving into authentic connection, what would it be?
I would say the most important thing you can do, two things. First, get a pen and paper and write down where you're spending your time, right? Like, what are you giving your time and energy to? Then write down, what are you committed to in your life? Like, what do you want? Like, I don't care if it's in relationship, your legacy in the world. What do you want from the living of your life?
Exactly. I love that. Yeah.
And then begin to, and not from a space of something's wrong. but just from a space to observe. If this is what I'm giving my time to, and this is what I'm committed to having, how can I give more time to this than I'm giving to this? Right? And that's living a more authentic life when you get present to what you're actually committed to in life.
Yeah.
And you start taking actions consistent with what you're committed to having, even if it's just a one action or a small action, or just telling a friend, hey, I'm committed that, I get in shape. How can you support me? You want to go to the gym with me?
Yeah.
It's one small action, but that's aligning with who you are more authentically than what you're actually doing. So
yeah, those are great. I love those. It's like, getting clear about our values, I think too. Like I pick up that from what you're sharing, like get clear about what you value and what you need, and start to lead with those. I think the clarity is important. I wrote down 5 principles or practices, I should call them 5 practices of authentic connection. And I think I just want to share them. So the first one is presence. You can't do this work without presence. It's so key. So presence is the foundation of it. Communication, learn how to communicate, right? Learn how to communicate your needs, learn how to learn about body language and verbal, nonverbal and verbal communication. So this is key. Vulnerability is essential in authentic connection. So if that's something that you struggle with, practice it. Practice being vulnerable more and sharing with people that you feel safe with. And then the last 2 are curiosity and empathy. And I just think that authentic connection requires us to lead with curiosity, to take an interest. And I think that's a lot of, actually, when I think about authentic relating and what I'm doing, is I'm constantly leading with my curiosity, and it keeps us out of the territory of making assumptions. Right? When we lead with curiosity, we're inquiring, we're asking questions. So we're actually moving away from that. Assumptions is jumping to conclusions, whereas curiosity is leading with questioning and inquiry. So I think those are important. And I want to actually shout out to, we have a course in the Gay Men's Brotherhood called Building Better Relationships. And this would be for people that want to get good at authentic connection and vulnerability, and learn more about authentic relating. That would be a really good course for that. And that's at, if you go to gaymensbrotherhood.com and under courses, you'll see the Building Better Relationships course. I just wanted to give a shout out to that because I thought it would be perfect for this episode. Yeah.
Awesome. Really quickly, Matt, the world of curiosity also has us not be stuck with life the way it is.
Yes, exactly.
The moment we stop being curious about life and living is the moment we're stuck with the way it is.
Yeah.
Curiosity has us continue to explore the living of life.
Yeah.
It makes it vibrant, like a child. A child does not, like they play with a box and it's like, oh, it's a fire truck. And then the same box is a rocket ship. But as we get older, we stop playing in life that way, and we stop being that kind of curious. It's like, no, it's a box, and that's all it is. And we live life from that way versus this whole world of curiosity. And when we are curious, we never know what we'll discover.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. So good. Yeah. And, how can we return to that? How can we return to that? Because I experience that as imagination and playfulness. Do you know what I mean? And that is this very childlike energy that is the embodiment of curiosity. I do agree. But how can we return to that? What's one thing you could share to help people return to that?
You have to find communities of people and individuals who share that kind of life and living. It only happens, Matt, in community. Because when we're stuck or when we're by ourselves, it's easy to go back into the way life has been.
Yeah, the programming.
I've been in personal growth and development work for the last 12 years. I teach personal growth and development stuff, right? And by myself, I'm right back in it. I can sit at this desk and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm suffering and I got to do life by myself and all this stuff. Right. And that is so inconsistent with the way my life is. I have communities of people who are there to support me and love me and whatever. But by myself, goes right back to the programming.
Yeah.
Community and finding communities of people who play in that domain is important.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I can't wait to host the first retreat for the Gay Men's Brotherhood where we can play and experience and come into connection with each other. So I'm excited for that day to arrive. Well, it's been a slice, honestly. I've really enjoyed conversing with you and learning from your wisdom and sharing and being seen by you and all the things. So thank you for coming and spending an hour with us. And for people that want to check out your book, they can go to what was it here? www.myauthenticbook.com.
Yes, myauthenticbook.com or myauthenticbook on Instagram. So
Cool.
yes.
Okay, I'll make sure that's all in the show notes. And thank you to the listener viewer for tuning into yet another episode. God, we're at like 140 now or something like that. We're getting up there, so it's great. And yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment. And if you have a question for either Jamaal or myself, please leave it in the comments. We'll make sure that we see it and tend to it. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform and you liked what you heard today, please leave us a 5-star rating because it helps us get into the ears of people. That's what we want. We want to spread the word here. So, all right. Much love to everybody. Much love to you, Jamaal. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.